The chandeliers at the Grand Pacific Hotel glittered like a sea of stars. Warm light poured through the ballroom windows, dancing across the polished marble floors. Gentle classical music floated through the air, soft yet full of elegance, the kind that made your chest tighten for no reason you could explain. I stood in front of the mirror in the dressing room, my fingers slightly trembling as I adjusted the soft navy blue dress my sister Jessica had chosen for me. "This color suits you best," she had smiled. The fabric hugged my frame just right, not too revealing, not too modest, simple, timeless, elegant. And somehow it made me feel loved. Outside the door, I could hear the low hum of voices, the clinking of champagne glasses, the rustle of footsteps across the carpeted halls. The world was celebrating. Jessica was getting married today, and for once, everything felt like it was falling into place. Then there was a knock. "Maggie, are you ready?" It was Robert's voice, my husband, steady, warm, familiar. And yet it carried the tiniest tremble I almost missed. As I adjusted the necklace around my neck, my thoughts drifted, like they always did on big days, back to childhood. Jessica and I had shared a room until we were 15. She was the whirlwind, I was the calm. She filled the space with stories, glitter, music, and motion. I filled it with books, quiet rituals, and late-night journal entries. I remembered her brushing my hair before school while humming pop songs off-key. I remembered the time she lied for me when I broke Mom's favorite vase, saying it was her fault. She always said, if we're sisters, we protect each other. That's the rule. We weren't just siblings, we were a team. Through scraped knees, family holidays, high school heartbreaks, it was always Jessica and Maggie, us against the world. Even after Dad passed away 5 years ago, we became closer than ever. The funeral broke us down, but it also pulled us in. I saw her cry, really cry, for the first time in years. That night, we slept in the same bed like two little girls again, and she whispered, "I'm glad I still have you." So how could I possibly imagine that one day she'd look me in the eyes and smile while planning my death? The door creaked open, and there he was, Robert. 12 years of marriage, and somehow my heart still reacted like it was the first time I saw him in uniform, back when he was a new recruit in the fire department, standing under that summer sun, offering me a bottle of water and the most genuine smile I'd ever seen. "You look stunning," he said, stepping into the room. I turned slightly in the mirror, smiling as I met his eyes. Robert wasn't the loud type. He didn't use big, poetic declarations. He loved with small gestures, with early morning coffee, with warming my hands in winter, with checking the locks twice when I felt anxious. His eyes always held that quiet kind of love, the kind that didn't scream, but never faded. Brown, soft, and constant. He fixed the sleeve of my dress gently and said, "Jess picked the right dress. You glow, Maggie." And I knew he meant it. He always meant what he said. In the chaos of life, Robert had always been my calm, my compass. And I didn't know it yet, but that calm was about to save my life. A few moments later, I made my way to the bridal suite to check on Jessica. I expected excitement, maybe a bit of pre-wedding nerves, but when I opened the door, she stood there, Jessica, not just dressed in a wedding gown, but completely transformed. She looked ethereal, like she belonged in a magazine cover or a dream. Her gown was made of delicate ivory silk with lace that wrapped around her arms like whispers. Her hair was swept up in a perfect bun, not a strand out of place. Her makeup was flawless, not too much, not too little, just enough to make her glow. "Jess," I breathed, stunned, "you look like a goddess." She turned to me with a radiant smile, wide, confident, camera ready. But something flickered in her eyes, just for a second, something I couldn't place. Cold, sharp, calculated. It disappeared before I could fully register it. "Maggie," she said sweetly, stepping forward to hug me. Her perfume, soft vanilla and lilies, reminded me of childhood, of when we used to sneak into Mom's closet and pretend we were brides, laughing and tripping over high heels that didn't fit. I smiled back, but something inside me felt ever so slightly off, like a piano that was perfectly tuned, except for one barely noticeable key. The ceremony ended in a burst of applause, and soon the ballroom transformed into a glowing sea of golden lights, crystal glasses, and soft jazz echoing under the chandeliers. Robert and I walked in side by side. I felt lighter, joyful even. Jessica looked happy, and that was all I had ever wanted. We took our seats at the family table near the stage. Mom sat across from us, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief, and David's parents were smiling politely, enjoying their champagne. Everything felt right, until I looked at Robert. He hadn't touched his drink. His body was still too still, eyes scanning the room slowly, not admiring it, but reading it. Reading people, patterns, movements. I leaned closer. "Are you okay?" He didn't answer right away. His jaw tightened just slightly. Then he forced a smile and said, "Yeah, just a lot of people, a lot going on." But I knew that look. It wasn't nerves. It wasn't overwhelm. It was alertness. The kind I'd seen before when he was on duty, when something felt off and he couldn't explain why yet. That was the first moment I realized Robert wasn't just watching the celebration. He was watching something that didn't belong there. The smell of lemon butter and fresh herbs filled the ballroom as the main course was served. Waiters in white gloves moved gracefully between the tables, placing down steaming plates of pan-seared white fish, golden, flaky, drizzled with a shimmering citrus glaze. A faint sizzle still lingered in the air like applause from the kitchen. Around us, guests smiled, laughter bubbled, champagne glasses clinked again. Someone complimented the chef loudly from the next table. I leaned toward Robert, grinning. "Wow, smells amazing, doesn't it?" He didn't answer right away. I didn't think much of it. Maybe he was tired. Across the table, Mom laughed at something David's brother said. Jessica beamed under the soft lights as David poured her another glass of wine. They looked blissful. Everything looked perfect. But next to me, Robert still hadn't touched his fork. Instead, he stared, not at me, not at the food, but toward the kitchen. Eyes narrowed, shoulders slightly tensed, like a soldier scanning the battlefield. And for a moment, I wondered, what exactly was he seeing that I couldn't? I glanced at Robert again. Still no words, still no fork in hand, still that same focused stare toward the kitchen. His posture wasn't relaxed anymore. His shoulders were pulled tight, his jaw locked. His breathing was steady but measured, like someone preparing for something, like someone counting seconds. I whispered, "Babe, what's going on?" He didn't turn his head, didn't blink. His eyes tracked something or someone near the swinging kitchen doors. I followed his gaze. Nothing seemed out of place. Waiters moved in and out like clockwork. Plates, trays, champagne, everything was seamless, elegant. But Robert's instincts were never wrong. Not when he was on duty, not when it came to danger. And in that moment, I realized he wasn't just watching a wedding reception. He was watching for a threat. And whatever it was coming from the kitchen. I leaned in closer, whispering under the chatter and laughter, "Robert, what's going on?" He didn't answer, didn't even flinch. His hand slowly moved toward the edge of the table, not to grab his glass, not to take a bite, but just to anchor himself. His fingers curled around the wood, like he needed to ground his body, like something inside him was already bracing for impact. I glanced around the ballroom. Everything still looked normal, elegant, joyful. People were laughing. Champagne was being poured. Jessica and David were deep in conversation with the best man. I turned back to my husband, now frowning. "Robert," I whispered again, "you're scaring me." Still no reply. But now I could see it clearly. The way his eyes moved, the way his shoulders stayed locked, the way his whole body tensed, like he was in a burning building, waiting for the roof to give in. And I began to realize, whatever he was sensing, it wasn't small. Then I saw it happen. Robert's body leaned forward just slightly, like someone trying to get a better angle on something far away. His eyes narrowed, focused. He wasn't scanning anymore. He was locked in. I followed his gaze again, back toward the swinging kitchen doors, and for a moment, I caught what he saw. A chef, talking to someone in a low voice. Then the chef looked down at a plate. He picked up a small bottle from the side counter. Dark, amber, the label peeled and unreadable from this distance. Robert's entire posture shifted, his hand clenched into a fist. That plate, he muttered under his breath so quietly I almost didn't hear. I stared at him, confused. The waiters were picking up the plated dishes now, moving back toward the ballroom. One of them, a young man with a calm smile, held the very plate the chef had just touched. Robert's eyes didn't leave it, not for a second. The plate was getting closer. The waiter was now just 3 tables away, weaving effortlessly through the crowd, a smile on his face, a steaming dish in hand. Robert's breathing changed, slower, heavier, controlled. He leaned in, and this time he finally spoke. Not loudly, not panicked, just low, calm, firm. The kind of voice he used when pulling someone from a burning building. "Maggie, get up." I blinked. "What?" He looked straight into my eyes, and for the first time that night, he wasn't trying to keep me calm. "We're leaving, right now." And just like that, the laughter faded, the light dimmed. The wedding no longer felt like a celebration. I hesitated for a moment, confused. Robert didn't usually speak like that, not unless something was wrong, seriously wrong. He stood up first, not in a rush, not drawing attention, just calm, controlled, deliberate. He reached for my hand beneath the table, gave it a firm squeeze. That was all it took. I rose with him slowly, still unsure what was happening. Nobody noticed. The music kept playing. Glasses clinked, laughter echoed. Jessica was at her table, smiling at guests. David raised his glass in a toast. Everything continued like nothing was wrong, except it was. We moved toward the exit with quiet urgency, like ghosts slipping out of a painting. Not a single person turned to look. We reached the parking garage. Robert clicked the unlock button and opened the door without a word. Usually, he opened the door for me. Usually, he made sure my dress didn't get caught. Usually, he smiled. Not tonight. He climbed into the driver's seat, closed the door harder than usual, and stared straight ahead. I settled into the passenger seat, heart pounding in my chest, mouth dry. The engine started, but still no words. I looked at him. His knuckles were white around the steering wheel, jaw clenched, eyes fixed forward, shoulders like steel rods. "Robert, please talk to me. What's going on?" He didn't respond. Outside the windows, the hotel lights blurred as we pulled away. But inside the car, it felt like we were driving straight into something darker than night itself. The car rolled to a stop. Robert didn't say a word. He turned off the engine. And for a moment, the only sound was the soft tick-tick of the cooling metal, and our breathing, unsteady, heavy, almost synchronized. Streetlights cast dim shadows across his face as he kept his hands on the steering wheel, fingers still gripping tightly. I couldn't take it anymore. "Robert," my voice cracked. "Please, I'm begging you. What's going on?" He slowly turned his head toward me. His eyes weren't angry. They were afraid. For me. And then he asked it softly, steadily, almost too gently. "Do you remember you're allergic to peanuts?" The air in my lungs stopped moving, because that was the kind of question people didn't ask unless they were about to tell you something you'd never forget. Robert took a breath, slow, heavy, like what he was about to say might break something between us, something fragile and pure. I saw her, Maggie. I didn't speak. Right before they brought out the fish, I looked toward the kitchen, and Jessica was there, talking to the chef. My heart began to pound. At first, I thought it was just casual. Brides talk to staff all the time. But then, his voice tightened. She pointed directly at your plate. I blinked. My plate? Robert nodded slowly. Not the table, not the row. She pointed to the exact dish. I saw her mouth something I couldn't hear. And then, he paused, eyes narrowing at the memory. The chef reached under the counter, pulled out a small bottle, amber-colored. I knew it the moment I saw it. Knew what? I asked, voice barely a whisper. It was peanut oil. I shook my head. No, that's not possible. Jess wouldn't. But I couldn't finish the sentence, because somewhere deep inside my body already knew. Robert didn't blink, didn't flinch. I've responded to food allergy calls before, Maggie. Dozens. I know what peanut oil bottles look like. The shape, the cap, the amber color. That was it. No doubt. I stared at him, unable to speak. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a small notepad, flipping to a page. On it, a sketch. The exact bottle. Labeled. I drew it, right after I saw it, just in case I had to prove it later. Silence thickened in the car. I could hear my pulse in my ears. Then Robert said it, clearly, quietly, and absolutely certain I saw the bottle. It was peanut oil. Maggie, she wanted you dead. I stared at Robert, my mouth open but empty of words. Then I shook my head, again, and again, faster. No, Robert, you misunderstood. Jessica wouldn't. She wouldn't do something like that. He didn't interrupt. He just let me speak, let me deny it. She's my sister. She's family. She helped me pick this dress. She hugged me before walking down the aisle. She smiled at me like she always does. This has to be a mistake. My voice cracked on the last word, because even as I said it, it didn't feel true. Memories came flooding in, Jessica, making me tea when I was sick. Jessica crying when Dad died. Jessica whispering, "I'm glad I still have you." None of it matched what Robert just said. None of it matched peanut oil and a death sentence. I grabbed his arm. "Please tell me you're wrong." But his silence was louder than any scream. Robert exhaled slowly, like he had been holding this in for too long. "There's something I haven't told you," he said, his voice low but steady. I turned to him, still clinging to a thread of doubt, still searching for a way to make this make sense. Last month, when I ran into Jessica at your mom's house, we talked for a few minutes while you were on the phone. I said nothing, just listened. She brought up your father's will. My chest tightened. She asked me, if something happened to Maggie, what would happen to the inheritance? I froze. Those words. Not if Maggie ever needed help. Not if Maggie lost her job. Not if Maggie got sick. But if Maggie died, I whispered. She said that Robert nodded slowly. I didn't think much of it at the time, just assumed she was thinking about logistics. But now, he looked at me, now I know. She was thinking about what she'd get if you were gone. Robert opened the glove compartment and pulled out a folded envelope. I got a copy from your mom's lawyer, he said. After Jessica brought it up, I asked to see the original. He handed it to me and I unfolded it with shaking hands. At the top, Last Will and Testament of William E. Winston. I skimmed the lines, but Robert spoke softly beside me, guiding me through. Your dad split everything, 70% to you, 30% to Jessica. I nodded, lips trembling. But there's a clause here. He pointed to a paragraph halfway down. If the primary beneficiary passes away first, the entire estate goes to the remaining heir. The words blurred. Not just legally valid, intentional. My heart sank. So if I died, Jessica would get everything. Robert's voice was steady, but quiet, like a man stating the obvious to someone who didn't want to believe it. I stared at the will, but my mind had already drifted back to the moments I hadn't thought twice about until now. That time, Jessica laughed too hard when I told her I was helping Dad change his medication. That cold shrug she gave when I asked her to visit him in the hospital. That day she said, "You're always the favorite. You get to be the saint." It sounded like a joke back then. Now it echoed like resentment. I remembered her texting back just once during Dad's final weeks. "Sorry, swamped with work. Can you handle it?" I always said yes, and she always let me. And then the toast. Just hours ago. Her glass raised, her smile radiant. "To my beautiful sister Maggie, I could never have made it to this day without you." But behind the smile, was there something else? Was that goodbye? I couldn't breathe. The silence in the car was thick, heavy, like grief, fresh and choking. I looked down at the will again, but the words no longer mattered. Jessica's voice echoed in my head, her laughter, her toast, her "I love you, sis," all of it. I leaned forward, my head in my hands. And then the whisper escaped my lips like something broken inside finally gave in. She really wanted me dead. My shoulders shook. And Robert, he didn't say a word. He just reached over and held me. Robert didn't hesitate. The moment we pulled up to the Grand Pacific's side entrance again, he got out of the car and walked straight to the manager's desk. I stayed in the car. I couldn't face anyone. Not yet. From behind the tinted glass, I watched him calm, firm, unwavering. 10 minutes later, he returned to the car. "They're pulling the surveillance footage now," he said. "Kitchen area, back prep station, dining floor." I looked at him stunned. They didn't ask why. They didn't have to. His jaw clenched. I told them it might involve attempted murder. They took it seriously. For the first time since we left the wedding, I saw something in Robert's eyes. Not fear, not grief. Determination. Inside the surveillance room, the air was cold. Robert stood next to the manager as the footage played. Timestamp 5:43 p.m., 37 minutes before he pulled Maggie out of the ballroom. The camera angle showed the far end of the kitchen, busy, chaotic. But then Jessica entered the frame. She wasn't wearing her bridal veil anymore, just the white dress. She walked straight to the head chef. No hesitation. She leaned in, she pointed. Not at the kitchen, not at a dish on the counter, but at one specific plate being prepared. The camera zoomed in enough to see the chef nod, then reach down, then lift a small bottle. The label, peanut oil. Robert's fists clenched. The manager went pale. No audio, no excuses, just evidence. The manager's phone buzzed. He looked up from the footage, his face even paler than before. "We just got something from the IT department," he said. "Private messages." From the bride's reserved server access, he handed Robert the tablet. There were 3 messages, all time-stamped, all from Jessica. The last one made Robert's breath hitch. "Jessica, if Maggie's gone, the inheritance gets streamlined. We could open 3 restaurants by November." The words were clinical, not grief, not guilt, just business. Robert handed the tablet to the manager. No words, just a single thought screaming in his mind. She planned this, every single detail. They met in the hotel lobby. Maggie had barely stepped out of the elevator when David rushed toward her. He looked like he hadn't slept, tuxedo wrinkled hair, disheveled eyes, red. Maggie froze. David didn't try to touch her. He just stopped and looked straight at her. "I didn't know," he whispered, voice cracking. "I swear, Maggie, I didn't know a damn thing." She said nothing. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his phone, his hands trembling. He showed her the last message from Jessica. "Jessica, With her gone, we can finally move fast. You and I deserve this. David swallowed hard. She sent me that after the ceremony. I thought she meant Maggie was going to move overseas. He looked at Maggie, tears in his eyes. But she meant dead, didn't she? Maggie's voice was barely a whisper. Yes. David's voice had changed. It wasn't broken anymore. It was steel. He turned to the hotel manager. Can I borrow your phone? The manager blinked, unsure. Is it an emergency? Yes, David said without hesitation. Legal emergency. He dialed. A law firm answered. This is David Collins. I need to initiate divorce proceedings immediately. My wife attempted murder. The room went dead silent. Robert's hand reached for Maggie's. She squeezed it, not out of fear this time, but stunned relief. David looked at her, then added, "And I'm ready to testify. Against Jessica, under oath." Jessica didn't cry. She smirked, like it was beneath her, like none of this could touch her. The police read her rights. Camera flashes burst across the lobby. Guests gasped. Her lawyer was quick. She suffered a mental break, a temporary psychotic episode caused by grief. She didn't mean to hurt anyone. But the DA wasn't buying it. He placed a USB drive on the table. Security footage. Jessica pointing, whispering to the chef, a bottle of peanut oil on the counter. The judge watched it in silence, then looked up. The defense of temporary insanity is rejected. She will stand trial. In the courthouse hallway, Maggie waited. Her hands trembled. Then her mother arrived, face pale, shoulders low, eyes hollow. She sat beside Maggie, silent, then whispered, "I failed you. I always defended Jessica, because she was loud, bright, magnetic. But you stayed with your father when no one else did." She wiped her eyes with shaking hands. "I never said thank you, Maggie. Never told you how proud I was. And now it's too late." Maggie looked at her a long, quiet stare, then whispered back, "No, Mom, it's not too late." The therapy room smelled like peppermint and rain. Maggie sat stiffly. "I feel like a stranger in my own skin. How do you trust again when your own blood wanted you dead?" The therapist nodded slowly, let the silence breathe, then asked, "Who did you call when it hurt the most?" Maggie blinked. Tears welled in her eyes. Robert. Robert was always there. Outside therapy, in the kitchen, on quiet walks. Never demanding, never preaching. One night, Maggie broke down on the floor, shaking. Robert sat beside her. Didn't fix, didn't talk, just held her, as if to say, "You don't have to carry this alone." The living room was dim. Maggie lit a single candle. She held her father's photo, the one where he stood in the garden, smiling, sun in his eyes. Her voice cracked but steady. "You gave me everything, Dad. Now I'll live for both of us." The elevator doors opened with a soft ding. Maggie stepped into the office, heels clicking on polished tile. Heads turned. Whispers followed. But Maggie kept walking. No makeup, no dramatic entrance. Just her. Stronger, quieter, unshakable. She reached her desk, the same corner, the same view. She sat down, opened her laptop. Then whispered to herself, "This time, I'm not disappearing. I'm becoming." There was a knock at the door. Maggie opened it, and there stood Sarah. No words, just a long, bone-cracking hug. They sat on the couch. 2 mugs of tea. Steam rising like breath after heartbreak. Sarah looked at her. "You know, Maggie, blood isn't always thicker than love. Family is who stays, who doesn't run when it gets ugly. And I'm staying. Always." Maggie didn't cry. She just reached over and held Sarah's hand. "Thank you for never leaving." Sarah smiled. "The people who truly love you, they're your real family." The sun rose without apology, warm, golden, kind. Maggie and Robert walked hand in hand down the quiet street. No drama, no whispers, just birdsong and breath. She glanced at him, the man who never asked her to be okay, but always made space for her when she wasn't. They stopped at a small cafe. 2 coffees. 1 blueberry muffin shared. Maggie smiled, watching the morning light catch in Robert's hair. There were days I thought I'd never feel this again. He squeezed her hand gently. And yet, here you are. She nodded. Not in triumph, but in quiet victory. Peace doesn't come loudly. It comes with footsteps that don't echo. Maggie sat by the window. A soft rain traced silver lines down the glass, like memory trying to leave quietly. She thought of Jessica, the betrayal, the lies, the plan to erase her. Her chest tightened, but this time, no tears. No, she whispered to herself, I can't forgive her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But then she looked at her reflection, the woman who had loved too deeply, trusted too quickly, blamed herself too long. Maggie closed her eyes and took a breath. But I forgive you, she said gently. I forgive you for not seeing it sooner. I forgive you for believing blood meant loyalty. And I forgive you for loving her anyway. The room was silent. Maggie stood in front of the camera. No makeup, no music, no filters. Just truth. Her eyes didn't waver. Her voice was low but steady. I almost died because I believed family meant safety. I believed blood meant loyalty. She paused. But I lived. I survived because love showed up. Real love. The kind that protects without asking. That stays when it's easier to run. She took a breath. I don't need revenge. I just need peace. And then she looked straight into the lens. I nearly died for family, but I came back to life for love. Cut to black. Not everyone who shares your blood deserves a place in your life. Sometimes it's not betrayal from strangers that breaks us. It's the betrayal from those we once called family. But healing begins when we stop chasing the love that hurts us and start recognizing the love that holds us, protects us, and never asks for anything in return. Protect your peace. Choose your people. And remember, real family shows up not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. We share real emotional stories that remind us what it means to love, lose, and live again. And if you've ever been hurt by someone you trusted, just know you're not alone. You are seen. You are loved.